righty, good day, beautiful people, and welcome back to the Dr. Coach Show. I'm your host, Dr. Coach Danny Pueblos, and today I have my good friend and mental performance coordinator of the San Francisco Giants, Francisco Rodriguez. How you doing today, Francisco?
I'm doing well. Thanks for asking, and thank you for having me. How are you doing?
Absolutely, man. I'm doing well. I'm doing well. It's the end of the week now, and we're just grinding down, and I know you're getting ready to go, right? The chaos is about to start.
Yes, we just finished a development camp, as we call it, and a strength and conditioning camp. Two different things. One to get some prospects going for the season, and another one, the upper level talent to get ready for Major League Spring Training and be ready for that situation. So two different camps, wrapping up tomorrow. We feel like it's been good, but we shall see in the next coming weeks how good it was.
Yeah. Yeah, it's exciting stuff, man. Once it starts, that ball keeps rolling from there, right? So best of luck to you. So yeah, I appreciate you taking the time to come on here and just talk shop. Like I was
Of
mentioning to you
course.
before, just talk shop. I love talking to other pros in the field, the mental performance, and I've had different professionals and mental performance, on my show as far as sports, military, and otherwise. Definitely important, definitely a growing field, right? Um,
Yes,
and
very much so, and very much needed.
Yeah, and I mean, I know you've been in this a while, which yeah, we'll talk more about that in a second. But just since I've been in it for man about 12 years now, I mean, I've seen just tremendous growth. I just going from me looking around and saying, "Oh, I'm kind of seeing this stuff being implemented, but I'm going to take the risk of getting my education and that stuff." To now, it's like it's just booming, right? It's booming. Even when you look at um, like when ASP puts out the new CNPCs, right? When they put like a little post about the new CNPCs, right? For those of you who don't know what CNPC is, it's a Certified Mental Performance Consultant, which is what you and I are. And so um, I remember when I first started the game, like there was a few of us, at a time, right? And then now I just saw one yesterday. I mean, probably about 30 people on that
Yep.
list, which is
Yep.
great. It's great. It's just it's a sign of the growth of the field, and definitely exciting times. Definitely exciting times. And that's
Yeah,
why,
very much so.
what's that?
I said it's very much so. I feel
Yeah.
like the field is growing. We're getting more consultants. We're getting more younger consultants, but at the same time, understanding that being a CNPC is important. Having that title next to your name is very important. It's the highest certification we can get in the US. And like once you get that, it just shows you're legit. So it's pretty good to see the amount of people that are getting it, the growing numbers of it. Because as you said, like a few years ago, the announcements were three or four or five, but now it's like 20, 25 every time. It's
Yeah.
great. It's awesome to see.
Yeah. And I know there are people watching right now who are in the field and or are going to be working towards working in the field at some point of mental performance. And I'm glad that we're talking about this now because it is important. It is important. That's why because I also mentor a lot of people across the country who are going for their CNPC, and sometimes I get asked, is it worth it? Is it worth investing time and money into this process? And my answer is yes, absolutely. I wouldn't have worked with my mentor. I wouldn't have invested time and money, into my process and gone after the CMC if I didn't think it was worth it. And like that just every year just solidifies like my answer of like, yep, yep. And what I tell people who are like who are looking to get into the field or starting their careers, maybe they're in grad school or maybe just finish off grad school. Um, if you don't believe me as far as the importance of the CBC, go look at job postings in the field, right? I mean, before, if you had a CNPC, that was great, but it wasn't required. And now we're seeing a lot more jobs out there in mental performance where um, it's either required that you have it, or at the very least, like if you could show evidence that you are working towards it, then we'll still, we'll still accept your application. But because the field is growing, right? It's it's gonna be more competition, more competitive, right? And even more of a reason for people to get certified. And not just for the people working, like us providers out there, but um, I think just making everyone else aware that we exist and what this certification means. Like you mentioned, it means like you've achieved the highest level, as far as competency in the field, right? And I know I've talked to different, whether it's teams or athletic departments at the collegiate level, so in high school, um, about what I do, and and kind of what the certification is, kind of the goal center for a field. And surprisingly, most people, they've never heard of it, you know and they're bringing on consultants out left or right, off the street, and not really knowing, what they should be looking for, right? So I think educating everyone else, and that's going to happen. I really feel that's going to continue to grow, and people are going to become more aware of this stuff. Um, but nonetheless, right, that's where, if you are someone listening, right, and are looking to work in the field and especially stand out, I always tell my mentees, think, when you're going for these jobs, when you're applying for these jobs, ask yourself, how can I stand out? Right? How can I stand out amongst the rest? And this is one of those things, right?
Yeah, in the baseball industry, which is the only one that I know, there's a lot of teams are moving towards that preferred CMPC in order for to be able to get a job. Some teams are even going as far as making it mandatory.
Yeah.
But even those that are preferred, like looking for a preferred CMPC, just that makes you stand out. It's just
Yeah.
immediately gives you a leg up on the competition
Hmm.
because what we do, you don't know who does it well in a way or who's qualified to do it. But just having that certification, it immediately tells you, yes, I know what I'm doing. I have the experience. I've done the hours. Um, and it's easier to give you a shot at that point. So I very much agree that if you're on the fence about becoming CMPC, you should go for it. It opens a lot of doors.
Absolutely. Yeah. So thank you for solidifying that point, because it's I try to spread that message across, and it looks like the message, and obviously I'm only one of many people out there who are talking about this stuff, but because yeah, I get that question asked. Can I, another question I get is, can I do this without the CNPC? And it's kind of like, I kind of equate it to like a licensed, practitioner or therapist, and like a life coach, right? Where a life coach, yeah, you can, I'm sure you can do great things to help people, but one of the main things is, yeah, people. If I'm a consumer, if I'm looking for a therapist, I'm probably going with that licensed person, because I know, hey, I feel more confident in that person,
Yep.
right? So it's just one of those things. Just it's very similar to in other professions, right? And so especially when you look at the growth of the field, and all else being equal, right? You have your masters, they have their masters, and but what else can you differ from everyone else? And this is one of those things, and so yeah, just like we tell our athletes, I know, like when I've talked to people about what we do and introduce them to the topic of mental performance, I tell them, hey, listen, everyone's doing these, the drills, like in baseball. Everyone's, taking grounders. Everyone's taking BP. Not everyone's working on this right here,
Yep.
right? And that's where you get that edge. So this, like that certification for providers, or future providers in the field, or consultants, um, is that edge, right, if you will. So I want to hear from you now, Francisco, my friend, about your journey, right? So talk to me about, like, where you're kind of where you've been as far as working in baseball, like your affiliation in baseball, and kind of what that journey look like for you leading up to the position you are now?
So this is a second career for me. I'm a little bit older. So when I went to school for the first time, I had always had an interest in psychology, but I didn't go for it. I went for business instead.
Mm,
And I was quite happy financially doing what I was doing, but I wasn't happy with the day to day because I wasn't really doing what I was passionate about. So I had a chance to go back to school and really do what I should have done the first time. So I went to ASU, got my psychology degree, went to Barry University, got a master's degree um, in exercise and wellness there with sports psychology. And then in 2019, I graduated and I got a job with the Toronto Blue Jays as an intern, as a mental performance assistant coach. And that was a wonderful experience just because it taught me a lot. The Blue Jays at the time had a really, really good mental performance team, a lot of experience people, a lot of knowledgeable people, and they set me straight. You know, they challenged me a lot. They showed me how the job needs to be done, not so much from the classroom stuff, but how can you take the classroom stuff and apply it to real life.
Hmm.
And because of that strong mentorship I received with the Blue Jays, I feel like it was almost a second degree in a way because I went into baseball and I was just like, oh yeah, I got this stuff, you know, like I'm bilingual, I'm Dominican, I should be pretty good at this. This is my passion. I'll be fine. And once you start doing the work, you realize that no, you were very far from that. So I'll always be thankful for that experience that I had with the Blue Jays and all the members of the team that pushed me to where I am right now. So I was with the Blue Jays for 1 year, and then at the end of 2019, um, left the Blue Jays and then got hired by the San Francisco Giants. So I've been with the Giants since. So started working with them 2020 and going into my 6th year now and my 3rd year as a minor league coordinator. And because of that experience I had, I feel like it prepared me quite well to do the current job that I'm doing. It's a lot of understanding what you can do, when to do it, how to do it, and then at the same time, like understand the things that are under your control and the things that aren't. So that was good. Once I went back to school the second time, I got my psychology degree. I knew I wanted to work in baseball. I was a former baseball player, as are probably 80% of all Dominicans, but I didn't go as far as I could. Like, did I have talent to get to the big leagues? That's very, very debatable. The answer is no. But I feel like I left a lot on the table just
Hmm.
because I came to the States to do my degree and I was supposed to play baseball. And that just didn't happen to the level that the expectation was there.
Yeah.
And it was simply because I got distracted. There was a lot of things off the field, things that I didn't have in the Dominican and I was experiencing for the first time. And that took all my attention away. I didn't have the discipline to stay on the field or do the practice or wake up in the morning or lift weights and all these things that you have to do to be able to be good at this really difficult sport, right?
Yeah.
And I just got taken away by all these distractions. And again, because of that, I didn't reach a level that I could have reached with the talent that I had, whatever that level was, but I left a lot on the table. So once I went back to school, it's like, how can I help other people avoid the mistakes, the pitfalls that I went through? And that's through mindset, through having your mind work for you instead of working against you. So after that point, I knew I wanted to work in baseball. I knew this is where I wanted to be. So while at Barry, I worked with the baseball team, established some good relationships there, got some experience, and that helped me land a job with the Blue Jays. And that's kind of the way I ended up where I am right now. Like once I went back to school, I knew this is where I wanted to be. And thankfully things have happened. I am a lot happier with my day-to-day stuff. I'm pretty passionate about what we do and it makes the work a lot easier because it's not easy at all. So just doing something that you're passionate about, it helps.
Yeah. Yeah, amen, brother. Amen. And that's where a lot of when I talk to these up and coming future consultants or who are thinking about getting into the field. And they ask me, right, like, why are you in the field? Well, my answer, it's always is my two passions in life are helping people and sports.
Mhm.
And when I found out about sport and performance psychology, I was like, this is it, because I grew up in sports, surrounded by sports, being a big, going to Dodger games because, growing up in Southern California in LA, we were big Dodger family. And so going to games, or going to, Laker games or Raider games, in the area. So like I grew up in sports, like my family was into sports. And so, I knew like even in high school, I wanted to be in psychology to help people, but once I found out about this area, I was like, oh, like this is where I need to be. And so that's what I tell other people is, listen, if that sounds like you, go for it, and especially how there are so many more like opportunities for careers and stuff like nowadays compared to even just like 10 years ago. Um, you can definitely be able to live the dream, which being able to do what you love and get paid for it. Like what's better than that, right?
Yeah, very, very few things are better than that. And it's one of the questions that we tend to have with the younger crowd on the field, right? Is like, why do you want to do this?
Yeah,
A lot of them just, for example, in baseball, they see like, oh, I want to say I want to work for X team. I want the
yeah,
gear, I want the life, I want the travel. Like working in baseball is very difficult. And I am sure it is the same for any other industry, but again, I only know baseball. So working
mhm,
in baseball as a mental performance coach is very, very difficult. So that desire of I just want to do this to work with X team or get this hoodie or get to fly on planes or whatever it is that you want to do,
yeah,
like it will go away very quickly. Like
yeah,
you need to know what you're getting into. You need to really be passionate about it because it's a lot of hours, it's a lot of repetitions, but it can be so much fun.
yeah. And I'm so glad you brought that up, man. I'm so glad you brought that up because um, not a lot of people realize that. Not a lot of people realize what goes on behind the scenes,
Yeah.
right? Working in sports, especially pro sports, it's a sexy job, right? And I remember I was attending one of the ASP conferences a couple years ago in Texas. Um, I sat in on a panel that consisted of our colleagues in pro baseball, and the room was packed, right? Oh, you have all 4 or 5 pro baseball mental performance coaches, so you have all these people, bright eyed, so see, grad students fresh out of grad school, kind of they're like, oh, I want to work in pro baseball, so the room was packed, right? And one of the panelists, she was like, by show of hands, who wants to work in pro sports? Everyone, every hand shot up, right? And then she's like, all right, we'll see if your answer remains the same after we tell you what goes on, behind the scenes in real life, right? So, can you talk more about that? Can you talk more about, um, you know, the challenges, especially specific to baseball, because baseball there's a lot of games. There's a lot of games,
Yep.
and compared to other sports, right? And so, can you tell us like what goes on behind the scenes for the challenges and also the great things that happen, that occur as a mental performance consultant?
So the length of the season is both, in my opinion, a good thing and a bad thing.
Hmm.
Some of the challenges that we have is that like baseball is played, especially now, basically all year round. When you're not playing games, you're training, you're practicing. If you're not doing that, you're gonna get left behind. So, for example, for us, we started a camp middle of January. Most of the minor league seasons begin end of March, AAA, and then everybody else begins beginning of April. But you're talking about that we have a camp in January. And
Hmm.
we as coaches, as staff, like we need to be ready. We need to be here to provide these guys with the best information, the best messaging to help them develop because again, baseball is a very difficult sport There's a lot of players, very few positions at the major league level, which is where everybody wants to go. So they deserve our best.
Mm-hmm.
In order for you to be at your best from middle of January until end of October, probably middle of November right now, it takes a lot of dedication. It takes a lot of knowing yourself. It takes a lot of reflection because I'm not going to have the same energy every day. If somebody says that, they're lying. I'm not going to have the same drive every day. And just like baseball players, like
Yeah.
it's going to be a wave of it's going to be a roller coaster, not a wave, but a roller coaster. Some days you're going to
Yeah.
have it, some days you're not.
Yeah.
So even having that, how can I still be the best version of myself that day for the players?
Mm-hmm.
So the challenges is a lot of days, a lot of games, and you need to be ready when asked. And the reason I say that is because mental performance is still a field that is growing. Not all players understand what it is or are practiced enough in it. So if they are interested, if they show an ability to ask questions or do the work, you have to be ready
Yeah.
because you may not get many chances. And if you provide something that players don't think is beneficial for them, that word of mouth gets spread out very quickly. And then the chances that you're going to have to do your work lessen. So you have to be ready. So all the days that you have to be on are a lot. But I also think it's a good thing because you get a lot of reps. You get a lot of chances. You get a lot of, hey, my bad. I thought this could work. I'm sorry. This is the reason why I suggested it. It didn't work. Can we try something else? We're just trying to figure it out as much as you do. And then
Mm-hmm.
that kind of gives you that little bit of a buy-in of them understanding, like, no, he's not perfect. Neither are we. We're going to figure this out together and then go from there. So it gives you a lot of repetitions. It gives you a lot of chance to build relationships, which in
Mm-hmm.
my opinion is probably the most important thing in our field.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter how much you know. If the players are not going to listen to you, then you're done for. So being able to be that person that they trust, be that person that they know is always going to be honest with them, that is there for their development, that helps. So you have a lot of days to enhance or build those relationships. And it's a lot of hours. It's a lot of hours. I don't think people outside of the baseball industry understands. Like, just a quick example, camp today, players arrive at 9. That's when the van comes in for with the players. They arrive at 9. We need to be here earlier than that because we need to prepare. How early, that I leave that up to each individual coach. I don't want to put anybody on the spot. You need to be earlier than the players. Players do their thing. You're out there working with them. You're out there coaching. You're out there observing. Players leave, let's call it 1:30, 2 p.m. because it's a camp. You don't want to, it's a camp in January. You don't want to tire them out too quickly. We're still here. We're still here trying to figure out what went well, what didn't go well. How are we planning for the rest of the camp? So, in a camp in January, you're talking about maybe like an 8 to 4, 8 to 3. And then you have spring training, which I don't know, I'm not even going to talk about how many hours those are because you have all our players here. And then the season starts, and then games are at night. So then it shifts your schedule towards the end of the day instead of the beginning of the day. And then you have to make sure that you're getting enough sleep, that you are available for players, but not too available so that they're texting you at all hours of the day. So it's a lot of hours. It's a lot of hours. So the challenges are there, and there are many, and you need to be prepared because again, you're not going to get many chances. If you mess up and players don't trust you, that trust, getting it back, it's difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so it's very challenging, but at the same time, it's so much fun. Like baseball is so much fun. You get to see players struggle, you get to see them succeed, you get to see them try different stuff out. You get to see them at the highs of their highs when they have a good game, at the lows of their lows when they have a bad game. They ride that emotional roller coaster depending on results, and then you have to talk to them about focusing on the process, not just results. And it's fun. It's fun.
Mhm.
If you enjoy a challenge, it's a very, very fantastic experience, but it's not easy.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate you sharing all that, man. And you mentioned two things I love. I mean, among other among everything else was great, but the first one being that you kind of go. Sometimes you have like your great days. Sometimes you're not feeling it as much, or just the energy's not there, right? Like you said, just like baseball players, right? And that's where one thing when I'm working with my athletes is I tell them, listen, the whole you got to always be on your A game. It's not realistic. It's not realistic. It's like just like us as like mental providers, mental coach consultants. It's and any I don't care what industry you're working in. You're not always going to be like your top A game, right? But at the end of the day, right? Just like in sports, right? You got to go with what you have. Got to go with what you have. And that's a big issue that I've seen in some athletes where they almost like freak out when they're like, "Oh, I don't have it today," and they start getting in their heads more because they try to push to get that A game stuff right. Where it's like, "Hey, man, like you go with what you have, right, and give everything you got." Um, so I appreciate you kind of sharing that because that's real. That's real, and that's why I like to have these conversations, man. On here because. Um, there's only so much that these classes, only so much that a textbook could teach you. It's not until you're actually in this, working with the players, working amongst colleagues, that you really get a sense of like, all right, what can we apply here? What's real? What's not? What's all what's all foo foo or whatever you want to call it? What's realistic stuff, right? Real life stuff. And because I know I've come across many, young individuals or just inexperienced, professionals who um, they're so quick to just implement, these theoretical approaches, all this stuff. I'm like, that's great, this stuff, but does it apply, right? You can't just throw everything at the same, the same stuff at every single person expected to stick, and no, it's not how it works. You got to build relationships. You got to build that rapport first and foremost, because one thing I've learned, even just from my years of coaching baseball, football, basketball, that um, if you don't have a relationship with your athletes, and good luck, good luck, and that's where I'm always that's like my number one priority when I'm working with athletes is let me start building this rapport. Let me start building that relationship, right? And like one thing I tell my players is, listen, it's there's gonna be times where I might have to show you some tough love, right? I might have to call you out on certain things, but understand it's out of a place of love. It's out of a place of me wanting to help you get where you want to go. Um, and that's where like the players I've been working with, if I kind of tell them, hey, what's going on? Like, hey, we talked about that, remember? And oh yeah, coach, I got you, right? And so like, yeah, I'm not doing it to be a jerk, right? But they know it's coming from a good place. If you just come out screaming and hollering, or just like getting on them, without building a rapport, or if you're messing up and stuff, and they're like, I don't even know this person, like if they're good enough, then yeah, good luck trying to get that back. Good luck trying to get that trust back, right? And like you said, that stuff spreads like wildfire. Players talk, coaches talk, players talk to the coaches, and you might have to update your resume pretty soon. So a lot of great points, and I appreciate you sharing that.
One of the things that I always tell our athletes is that I'm not here to be your friend. Like
Mhm.
that is not my role. If that's what you're looking for, I'm not it. Like I'm
Mhm.
here to make you better. I'm here to
Yeah.
help you develop. And I'm going to do that to the best of my ability. I'm going to do that by doing what I believe is right at the moment. I
Yeah.
am going to mess up. Like I'm going to mess up. I'm not perfect, but we'll recognize it. I'll admit it. And then we'll change tactics and then we'll go from there. but you're always going to get my best effort of whatever I have that day.
Absolutely.
But I am not here to be your friend.
Hmm. Yeah, and that was the second part that I really loved hearing is the fact that you acknowledge that, hey, I'm not perfect, right? And that's big. I mean, that is harder than people realize to kind of come to that acceptance because there's a lot of people out there, and I used to be that person, so I know. Like I'll say it, I used to be that person many years ago where I hated admitting that I was wrong, or I hated admitting I made a mistake. I would like I would point the finger. I would blame something else or the whatever else going on. And over the as you get older, you kind of mature and stuff, right? And I'm like, you know what? Why am I doing that? And that's and if we are asking our players to be authentic, to be real, to hold themselves accountable, which is big, we gotta practice what we preach too. You
Exactly.
know. And because I've had coaches like that, and whether it's like they just they don't practice what they preach, and as an athlete, you're like you kind of lose respect for them sometimes, and so yeah, that's where I don't care if I was a coach or a mental coach, if a professor, whatever hat I've worn, throughout the years, if I make a mistake, I'll own that, and what I'm indirectly doing is showing them like, hey, I'm owning my stuff. You can too, right? So if you commit an error in the field, if you walk someone pitcher, right, or whatever else, hey, that's me. That's on me. Versus my defense, or the ground was slippery, or the mound was too wet or too soft or whatever, right? It's like so you know just by doing that, and this is something even just for coaches to do as well, to hold themselves accountable. Hey, I messed up. That's on me. I'll be better, right? You're showing your players like, hey, like I got to do that too, right? And it just it's a trickle down effect.
In my how I look at it is there's so many different tools that we can provide somebody as a mental performance coach. Some of them are going to work and some of them aren't. But I'm trying to give you what I believe based on conversations, based on questioning, based upon observations. I'm trying to provide something that I think is going to help, but it might not. So I have to let you know, hey, this is the reason why we tried this.
Hmm.
It didn't work. Do you want to try something different? Do you want to give this a little longer? Do you just not want to do it and move on? Because at the end of the day, it's their career. Like I'm just here for support.
Hmm.
And because I'm here for support, because I'm here to help them develop, I have to let them know when something I said doesn't work for them. And
Hmm.
that's okay. Like that is perfectly okay. I think one of the biggest things as mental performance coaches that we have is trying to increase self-awareness of an athlete so that they don't need us. When they're
Hmm.
on the field, when they're between the lines, they can do the things that we want them to do. And they don't have to look over their shoulder every time and be like, oh, what did Cisco say? Oh, what did
Yeah.
Danny say? It's like they can figure it out on their own. But at the same time, I also need to be self aware enough to be able to acknowledge that something just didn't work and express why you thought it was a good idea in the first place, and then try to provide a different tool, a different example, a different cue, or anything of the sort. At the end of the day, it's about helping them, and we're not going to be perfect all the time. Lord knows I'm not perfect all the time. So it's why not acknowledge it, and keep trying
Yeah.
something else.
Yeah, and that's it. It just exemplifies, the fact that everyone's different.
Yep.
And this one thing I've harped to my mentees and everyone else who listens to me is, you cannot have a sort of cookie cutter approach with working with your athletes, right, with your clients, and you can't just throw again the same stuff at every single person and expect it to work every time, and um, players they have different pregame stuff. They do different things. Some stuff, some might love meditation, some not. Some might do great with certain imagery practice, some not. So it kind of equated to like medication, right?
Yep.
Like one person takes one medication and it could work for them, a different person takes the same medication and maybe their body doesn't respond, the same. It's the same thing, right? It's like and this is the beauty about being able to work exclusively with a team is that you get to know these players, you get to know them in and out, and it gives us as the mental coaches the opportunity to learn. Okay, maybe this will work, right? Let's try this, let's try that, and you're tailoring your approach to these different athletes, um, and that's where I'm saying you can't just have the cookie cutter approach of helping every single athlete because everyone's different, everyone ticks differently, everyone is motivated differently, right? And I learned that early when I was coaching. Is like, hey, I got to talk to them differently. Some might they could take some tough love, some not so much. I got to talk to them a different way. But at the end of the day, I'm going to stay true to who I am, but also customize how I kind of approach to my approach to these athletes, and the part of that is getting to know. It goes back to that rapport. It goes back to building a relationship, getting to know them, and that's why I tell the younger providers is, listen, um, you have to continue to build your bag of tools, right, and have it at the ready. And when you're working with your athletes, or your clients, just you listen, right? You listen, you kind of get as much as possible, and you figure out, okay, let me try this tool, right? It's kind of like you're a handyman, right? It's like, let me try this tool here, because I remember when I was working through, like when I'm working with my mentees and we do I like to work through like case studies or like like mock sessions, stuff like that. A couple of times when I have like the really kind of green providers, and they're barely starting the field, right? So it's very normal. I went through that phase too. Everyone else does. But when I asked them, okay, how would you work with this athlete? And they start listing off, imagery, all this stuff. I'll say, okay, I'm glad you know the mental skill stuff, but I think there's some deep rooted stuff. We got to get dirty now. We got to get our shovels out. We got to get our big boy, big girl pants on and start digging, because there's some stuff that no matter what mental skills you give them, there's some lingering stuff deep down that I think we got to talk about. We got to get dirty, get our hands dirty. And I'm glad you brought the mindfulness part, because it doesn't matter how many mental skills we teach them, if they're not aware that when these situations happen, what's the point? What's the
Yep.
point? So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's when I talk to other mental performance coaches, and in baseball we're such a small group that it's a very tight knit community. It's like, if you want to get better at your role, you need reps. You need to practice. If you can't get those practice, role playing scenarios is a great way to get that experience, because you do have all the knowledge. We all have the knowledge. We all have the theories, but it's what works best when. So it
Mhm.
doesn't matter if you know all the theories. If you have players asking you a question 2 hours before a game, and the only thing that you can remember because you're on the gun is imagery, that might not be the best solution for that
Yeah.
player. So it's just like, how can I think about this case in a little time and come up with something that might work?
Hmm.
So role playing, getting all those reps, that experience right now it's one of the best ways of teaching you how to be successful once you actually land a job and start working on a professional field.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely, man. And just kind of getting away from the textbook and all that stuff, and that's great foundational knowledge to have, right? Very important.
Yes.
But it doesn't end there, right? That's where getting that first experience, going for it like you did, right? Were you an intern for the Blue Jays, you said?
Yes, I was.
Okay, so like internship opportunities, like anywhere. I mean, I know like there are certain clubs. I'm not sure if the Giants do this, but I know like the Diamondbacks, the D-backs, they have a annual internship kind of program, for up and coming providers, which I'm sure we're gonna see a lot more of. And I tell them, like, jump on these opportunities, get that firsthand experience, and um, or just go look around your local, your city. Go work with these teams. Even if it's for free, just get that experience. And And you're going to learn, you're going to grow, right? You're going to see, okay, what did I not do so well, and also what did I do well, right? And you just continue to grow from there. But you got to get that experience. Everyone starts there. Everyone starts, with very little knowledge and experience, but you got to start somewhere, you know.
Yeah, the Diamondbacks, they have a really good program and they have some very, very good performance coaches. So
Hmm.
if you are interested in getting into baseball, that the internships that they offer is something that I would recommend 1,000%. They
Hmm.
don't joke around in that internship. They will make you better. They will have you learn. And again, they're very good at what they do. So I would highly recommend that. We don't do that within the Giants, but I couldn't agree more. Just any way that you can get reps, whether that's paid, unpaid, the sport that you think you should work on, the sport that you know nothing about, going up to a Sunday. If you were interested in golf, going to Sunday in a driving range and just sitting there and talking to people,
Yeah.
going to high schools, just any way that you can get reps, they
Hmm.
will help you in the long run. Nobody is good enough to do a job right off the bat. You need reps.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And now, when it comes to you working with the players, um, can you share some examples of like how you've worked with them, right? You can kind of tie this in with the day-to-day stuff, but do you have like a specific time, where it's just kind of like office hours in a sense where, hey, if you want to come and talk to me, that'll be the time. Are you doing workshops? Like, can you talk to me, give me some examples of what that looks like for you?
Yeah, so it ties up into the day-to-day things. Like our schedule changes, but sometimes our schedule is pretty similar in terms of what they're doing on the field, in terms of actual like baseball skill practice.
Hmm.
Sometimes the schedule is the same. I don't like having office hours per se, but players know that I am in the office if they want to talk before or after practice. I've let them all know that, and sometimes they come in and sometimes they don't. I feel like for players, one of the biggest keys is just being available. So
Yeah.
being around them during practice, being around them during batting cages, bullpens, sim games, live games, gym sessions, when they're in the training room, which is a great time and place to talk to them because they can't move, they can't really do much. So it's a
Yeah.
great place to talk to them. But it's like being available is probably the biggest asset you can have, just because you never know when those conversations are going to happen. You never
Hmm.
know when players are willing to ask a question or feel like being a little vulnerable and having those conversations. So being available helps. Everybody does it their own way. I'm not saying my way is perfect, but it's what works for me.
Hmm.
I feel like office hours makes it a little more intimidating
Yeah.
for a player. They go to my office and somebody sees them and is like, "Oh, you came out of Cisco's office. What's going on?" Or you're
Yeah.
talking mental stuff, and that makes them a little defensive. So I try to be as available as I can outside of the office and just be open to having conversations no matter where. Batting
Yeah.
cages is a good time to talk to them as they're waiting around for their turns. Bullpens are a good time to talk to them. Once they're done, they sit down and kind of reflect on what happened. Training rooms are great, before or after practices are again, but I don't have specific office hours, but I can be available for them. I
Yeah.
think I think for me that's what works best. I'm like, hey, t- tell me what you need from me and I can make that work up to a certain extent. And then when I'll meet you where you are.
Yeah.
Like there are players that enjoy the office hour aspect of it, and I make myself available for office hours with them. There are players that like to talk when they're outside. There are players that like to talk outside of the complex, and we just go grab something to drink or meet up somewhere else and have a conversation. And it's just making yourself available to have those conversations and be willing to have those conversations and sometimes pivot from what you had planned to do that day to be able to have that conversation with a certain player.
Got it. Yeah, I appreciate you sharing the insight, man. And now is that pretty standard as far as like is that standard? Doesn't matter whether it's spring training, regular season, or do things kind of differ? I know obviously once the games start going, you're kind of focused on the games, but do you find yourself like teaching at all? I mean, as far as like mental skill stuff, or is it kind of pretty consistent?
So the way I answer that question was mostly related to like one-on-one conversations.
Mhm.
But during spring training, during camps, during affiliate visits, sometimes there is that element of group education
Mhm.
where you might present something, you might have a 15 to 20-minute window to talk to them about a specific topic. Maybe there are a couple of players on that team that are going through the same thing, and you're just like, hey, here are some tools to deal with this. Maybe I'm visiting an affiliate, and a coach is like, hey, would you mind checking in on X player? He seems down, or he's going through a slump, or he's emotionally tied up to results, which is a common one.
Mhm.
But I, I, I'm flexible with that in terms of between group education and individual education. I think there's a time and a place for everything. Usually during camps, when there's a big group, together here at the complex, like we'll do some educational stuff. We'll pick a couple of subjects that we want them to be aware of, to be more mindful of, or pay attention to a little bit more. And then we'll do some presentations. We'll do some activities. We'll do some coursework, if you will, and then we'll go from there. Other than that, it's like there might be some players that are interested in breathing exercises, so we might do some breath work with them, or we might be like, hey, this morning before practice, we have these 15 minutes where we're going to do a visualization. Anybody that's interested can come in and work on that, and then we'll go through that. So that's how we tend to do the group education aspect of it. But for the individual one-on-ones, it's how I answered before, where you just have to be available whenever they are, and then just go from there.
Got it. And what has been the buy-in? What's been how's the buy-in been as far as from the players' perspective?
I think it comes and goes. Um, I feel it's better now than when we started in 2020. So with the Giants, 2020 was the first year that we offered mental performance for the minor leagues.
Mm,
So obviously there was a little time there where we had to explain a lot about who we are, what we do, and how we go about it. And
yeah,
that still happens today because
yeah,
we're always getting new players, but not as much. Like at that time, it was just a lot of education. And 2020 wasn't the best year because of COVID. So we had to do a lot of the education aspect of it through Zooms and links and stuff like that.
yeah.
So I feel the buy-in is more now, but I tend to describe it as an ebb and flow, depending on how players are doing. If they feel like they need some support, then we're there. If players are doing great, if players are performing on the field like they usually don't want to change many things in the conversations that we have, then are quicker, smaller, but I think the buy-in is there. I always think the buy-in could be better, because I always think it can be better. But I feel like slowly we're getting to where I would like the department to be, but we're not there yet.
Got it. Yeah, and thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I think it's gonna continue to grow. I agree. I agree. As the awareness of what we do increases, you're going to see a lot of, and I would love to, hear from you, your perspective on this, having come from the Dominican. But Yeah, I'm hearing a lot more of chatter and implementation of mental skills, mental performance at the lower levels now than I ever have before. And so I think that that in itself will also can also help the overall buy-in, right, across sports, because you're gonna have these players who are gonna be exposed to this stuff, and not just like in college, but even in high school, right? Where do you see countries like the Dominican or Venezuela or Mexico, or maybe you only speak on the Dominican. Do you see that happening there? Obviously, baseball is life for so many people, in Dominican, in other countries. But what have you seen as far as like talking about mental performance and mental skill stuff?
I think it's starting to make its way. I still feel like we have a long way to go.
Got it.
And the reason is like it's not talked enough. Most of the players that get signed out of the Dominican or any other Latin country, they leave the education system very early to go to an academy to develop the baseball skills that they believe are needed to sign with a team.
Hmm.
Education, classroom work is not the most important
Yeah.
in the academy's eyes. Now, I could argue that it should be more important, but that's a different conversation.
Yeah.
So, because they leave the education world so early, some of the things that they might hear or might experience, they simply don't. They just know baseball and then that's it. So I think once one academy or two academies start doing mental performance work and they see the benefits of it, then that will take off. I know there's some companies that are doing mental performance work in the Dominican Republic and they're doing quite well. They're doing some good work, but I think it will take a little bit of time
Hmm.
before we get it to where we have to go. Now, with us, we are doing a lot of work with the younger crowd, with the younger Latin crowd, because there's so much that they have to learn. There's so much that they don't know. And it's
Hmm.
tough to ask them to do something that they've never heard about. So there's a lot of education that goes to that part of our athletes. And some of them they do the work, they see the results, and they're like, all right, this is cool. I'm going to continue doing it. Some of them you have to spend a little more time explaining it, but we are making the effort to be a little more intensive with the younger crowd, just because the better you build the lower end as they continue moving up levels in our organization, then the work gets easier.
Yeah. Got it. And speaking of that, what are some other challenges just working with these these lower level younger athletes and baseball players, um, from your perspective? Because I've had other colleagues on the show before. Speaking of the Diamondbacks, I had a Sydney Masters on here not too long ago, and I think she just got promoted to coordinator. Um, but I want to hear from your perspective as far as what you've seen, having gone to with this Latin American countries and other these now in the U.S. These different levels within the minor league. What are some common challenges, mental challenges, emotional challenges that you've seen and that you've helped athletes with?
So it changes, but I would probably put them in two buckets. If you're
Okay.
talking about Latin American kids, the biggest challenge with them is teaching them to learn.
Okay.
Just because they leave school early, they're only taught baseball. Some of them do have high school classes and they take that, but they don't know how to learn. And it's difficult to explain concepts to somebody that doesn't know how to learn. Like you can't expect them to do something when they don't even know how to do it. So
Yeah.
you take a little time and you have to make sure that they know how to go about it. And then you can get into mental skills work.
Yeah.
That's one. They don't have a lot of game experience. They get trained to just do well in showcases and things of the sort. They don't have a lot of game baseball IQ experience. So the learning aspect takes a little bit. I would probably say that's the biggest challenge, in my opinion, for the Latin American kids. in terms of mental skills, we're not talking about leaving your country, different languages, being away from your family, the economical aspects. That's a different conversation. So from a mental skills point, I would probably say that for the American players, I would probably say it's learning how to fail
Mm,
that is an issue. Most of the guys that get drafted are studs. They're stars. They have been very good in high school. They have been very good in college. That's why
yeah,
they're at this level.
yeah,
And then they start not doing so well. And it's tough for them to understand that reality that is like, hey, why am I not hitting 400 anymore? Why am I not striking everybody out? And it's just dealing with that emotional roller coaster of like, why am I failing? What is this?
yeah,
Frustration? Am I good enough? Doubts, lack of confidence. And then it's just working with them through that and be like, hey, your talent level is only going to get you so far.
yeah.
The rest, there's a lot of other stuff that we can work on for you to have your talent shine more consistently on the field. So I would probably say those two buckets in my opinion.
Got it. Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I've seen that, man. Just going from a big fish in a small pond to the small fish in the
Yeah,
small fish in the big pond, and that's what I've seen is that transitional time for so many players where, like you said, they're the studs in high school and college, and now it's like they're among other studs, and you're like, oh, and so that could definitely hit that confidence and therefore the motivation and the imposter syndrome's kicking in. It's like, do I belong here? Do I have what it takes? So then, they haven't had their first outing yet. They're already down. They're throwing in the towel, without giving themselves a shot. So yeah, man, there's a lot of stuff going on that, I know you and I could talk more and more about, because there's so much. And that's another reason why, what we do is so important. What you do is very important, man. And, I just want to say thank you again for coming on. I would love to have you on here again because I know there's a lot more conversation to be had and a lot of great insight that you provide, man. So again, thank you for coming on here today.
of course, anytime. Thanks for the invitation. And any other time you want to talk, just let me know.
Cool, appreciate it. All right, well, appreciate it, Francisco Rodriguez, again, mental performance coordinator for the San Francisco Giants. Thank you again for your time, my friend, and thank you everyone else who's watching today. Take care of yourselves and each other. We'll see you guys on the next one. See ya.